Hi there. Thanks for downloading and listening to the Lean Into Artcast, a show where some visual storytellers get together and take on different kinds of things that one thinks about when communicating with images. We think hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jersey Drozd. I'm a cartoonist and teaching artist. The other host of the show is...
Hey, I am Rob Stenzinger, a user experience and game designer. And we have a special guest today as well.
We have a special guest, somebody I haven't talked to in a long time, but I talked to a few times on my old show, Comics Are Great, John David Guerra. Hey, John.
Hey, nice to be back. I believe I had more hair last time you saw me.
I don't know if you did, actually, tell you the truth. But John, cartoonist, what do you call yourself as far as like job description?
Illustrator, comic book creator. That's usually what I stopped saying cartoonist because most people think that it means cartoons. Like animation.
Oh. Yeah.
Like, no, that's not that.
No, that's true. So like when I introduce myself at workshops, I'll say I'm a cartoonist, which is to say a person who writes with images. But I could see how that would still be could potentially be misconstrued as animation, because like that's somebody who writes with images as well, right?
Right.
Huh. Yeah, we're burdened with bad nomenclature, right? Graphic novelist. Oh, so you make comics with really vicious imagery in it, do you? Oh, no. It's a nonfiction comic. How can it be a graphic novel? Oh, here we go. It's a comic book. Well, that
isn't it? Oh, it's ultraviolet. Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah,
but you make
terms.
comic books. What kind of comic books do you make? You make one of my favorite comic books, a comic that has been a big influence on me over the years, called Nightmare Pro Wrestling.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, Nightmare Pro Wrestling. I've been doing it for a long time now. 4 or 5 years now.
Wow, has it been that long?
Yeah.
I know that like years ago I did a post on my website with like a bunch of Masters of the Universe redesigns, like this redesign of the characters, and part of my math that I did on like figuring out what the look and feel of it would be is I was literally asking myself, like, what would guys like John do, and what would guys like Luis Escobar do? Like, you two were like my guiding influences
Cool.
On developing the look.
That's cool to hear.
And it's basically, the premise is what? It's like it's pro wrestling. It's like the language I've been using online is like pro wrestling with Draculas and Frankensteins. I wonder if you could give me a better version.
Yeah, a friend of mine just said monsters wrestling, bam, that kind of thing.
That does sell itself, right?
Yeah.
At least it does to me. I may be biased. And like exploring your website, nightmareprowrestling.com. It's I noticed you have like some other projects there too. There's this thing called Monday Night Draw, and I'm kind of, I was intrigued, and I mean, in that this is like a speed drawing thing. It looks, and you had a series of those. It was pretty fun, right? Where all of a sudden,
it was when I had more time before I was a dad. Well, a dad of 2 children. I would watch wrestling, and I would do like kind of like a wrap up of what happened on that wrestling show, and I would sketch out like the events that happened. And eventually it just turned into, first it was like a bunch of images of a bunch of stuff that happened, but then that took up too much of my time. So I slowly transitioned into like a single image. But yeah, I don't know if I should say this, but I like with the other Monday Night Draws where it's just like, it looks like it's just me inking freehand. I cheated a little bit, and there's like underdrawing that you just can't see because I changed the brightness of it.
Ooh, that's an interesting hack or trick. I mean, so it's like somehow the screen cam isn't picking it up, but your eyeballs can.
Right. What am I using? I think Jersey mentioned Luis Escobar. I actually asked him a question of like how he was doing some of his screen capture like work, and I got Camtasia, and it actually has like a feature where you can change like the saturation of your lines. And I tested out different colors of like the underdrawings. I did them all in red, and red would still come up. So I changed them to a very light blue, and that I could change the saturation, and the blue would just like disappear, and it would look like I was just inking freehand.
Oh, that's pretty slick. I mean, they're very dynamic and fun drawings, and plus you had some fun chip tunes playing in the background. I'm like, this just rocks. And I just had to mention it. This kind of thing is, I find it's a really neat resource. So it's really cool that you share your process like that in that kind of project too. And I know we have other projects to cover today as well. That like something that I know is pretty big. You're working on is this Kickstarter, right?
Yes.
Related to Nightmare Pro Wrestling.
Right.
Tell us about that thing.
Well, it's I got 6 different artists to do 6 different issues, and each issue is a wrestling match that takes place at a certain place. And it's like the match card, like match number 1, match number 2, and everything that happens in that location. And it's called Nightmare Pro Wrestling Belly of the Beast, and it literally takes place inside the belly of a beast. So, the arena has like insides and a rib cage and stuff like that. And we got a lot of really good artists to do them. And yeah, I'm excited about it.
Would it be okay, John, if I played the video from the Kickstarter right here on the show? Would that be too weird?
Oh no, go ahead.
Oh my God, I adore this video. So I'm gonna go ahead and present to everyone. I'm gonna hit play.
I'm comic book creator John David Guerra. I took my love for pro wrestling and monsters and power slam it together to create my comic book series, Nightmare Pro Wrestling. The world of Nightmare Pro Wrestling has gotten so big, man, that I've had to form a tag team with 6 amazing artists to help me draw and contain the mayhem of Nightmare Pro Wrestling. I'm tagging with Jersey Devastator Drove, Nate the Nightmare Villanueva, the Terror Tanner Johnson, Rowdy Rob Sherwin, Psycho Steve Yurko, and the Deadly Dozer. Together, they're helping me take Nightmare Pro Wrestling to the next level. You know who else is helping me take MPW to the next level? You, the Nightmare Pro Wrestling Maniacs, that's who. That's where Kickstarter comes in. The cost to produce the comic is $13,000. The cost to ship the comic is $5,000. Plus the Kickstarter cost of $2,100, coming to a total of $20,100, man. Lend me your power, Nightmare Pro Wrestling Maniacs, so you can get your hands on these comics and find out which monsters survive the grudges and drama they create on their way to becoming Nightmare Pro Wrestling Champion.
Now, for those
awesome.
For those who are just listening in the audio, you need to go to Kickstarter, and we'll link to this in the show notes too, and search for Nightmare Pro Wrestling Belly of the Beast, because you need to see John in his full gear with the green screen and like the logos behind him, and with the tassels and the Ultimate Warrior hair. I mean, this is totally a sidebar, but it's like, as I watch this, I was like, yeah, I need to learn how to get in front of my projects like that. Like, I need to have that kind of like braggadocio and confidence and just chutzpah to be like, nope, this is how much I believe in it. I'm gonna put on wrestling trunks and I'm gonna scream it to the camera. That kind of gusto, man. Oh, it was just so much fun.
I had to get out of my comfort zone like big time. Like my throat was like sore for like 3 days, like hoarse for like 3 days.
I believe it.
It came at a price, but honestly, it's worth it. That's like the best Kickstarter video I've ever seen. So,
oh, thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, I had a friend that is helping me out, like with a lot of the business side of the Nightmare Pro Wrestling and the Kickstarter and some of the website, and he kind of helped give me that extra nudge to do that. And I was like, okay, let's go for it. And
yeah,
and, I mean, you hit all the messaging exactly right in that style and in that voice too, right? It's like you know, who's gonna help me with this? You're gonna help me with this. You know, lend me your power.
Yeah.
So good.
Watching a lot of Ultimate Warrior videos and practicing for a week with excited nervousness.
It's a lot of fun. Okay, but this leads us to our topic for the discussion. Is here you are, this guy who's got this ambitious project, trying to fund it on Kickstarter, and you are hiring other artists to work on this thing, which raises a lot of questions for me, because it's like, why not raise that $20,000 and, you know, just pay yourself to do it? Why even bring other artists into the picture on this? And then how do you pick the artists? How do you select the people to work on this thing? You know, and how do you manage that relationship once things are going? That's all the stuff we're going to cover in the first section, or well, throughout this discussion. But first, are you guys ready to kick into the first section where we talk about what it looks like to be
going through this hiring collaborators process? I'm excited. I would love to transition. Let's go there.
All right. So here comes the music. Let's transfer ourselves over with
the tower of power, too sweet to be sour, funky like a monkey. Oh yeah.
And here we are. Tense up.
I love it. Perfect.
On the ground. So what does hiring collaborators look like? Do you want to start us off, Rob, with what your curiosities are on this?
Well, I mean, let's see. This is something I've been chewing on as well. So I've got a lot of selfish angle on this, and I'm just not anywhere near as far along in the acting and even in the planning aspects of this. Like, how did you divide up your? I mean, I guess let's see. You divided up your project into these different story segments, right? But then, how did you go about finding the right people for these different parts of the work?
Well, I think in my case, it's like a little bit of a special case, because it's like wrestling. So, you know, like I had been following like some wrestling artists for a while, and I also had already been struggling like with the idea of finding like collaborators and artists to do this. I mean, it was a hard decision, you know, like, I remember, I think I was actually listening to one of the Lean Into Art podcasts, and you guys were having like your hardball question. And I was trying to think of a hardball question, like for myself at that time. I remember thinking like, when do I know it's time to hire like other artists for help? And I think what it came down to is wanting to take the comic to the next level, artistically and as a business. Because I talked about earlier how I was doing the comic for like 4 or 5 years, and I've only put out 5 issues, so it's like an issue a year. So if I hire 6 different artists, they're already doing like 20 years of my work. Yeah, because I following like deciding which artists to use. I already had been following like some artists that had like interest like in wrestling, and of course, like I've known Jersey for a long time, and I always thought like, oh, if I ever wanted to do a comic, who would I hire to help me out? And Jersey is actually one of the first people, because I know like his sensibilities and like the kind of stories that he likes, his familiarity with like 80s wrestling and stuff like that, and like the fun aspects of it. So I was like, oh, you know, that was like a no-brainer there for me. But like some of the other artists I had been following on Instagram, and I had like developed like a relationship with them, and I liked a lot of what they were doing, and I had my eye on them already. I was like, oh, you know, like, okay, if I end up going through with this, who would I actually choose to help me out with certain things, and with like specific matches, like to be exact, like some artists, like I noticed, like they would draw wrestling stuff, and they were like they were able to draw the more technical aspects of wrestling, which, you know, like holes and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, they do that very well. Some other artists, like they would show like action really well. And I was like, okay, with this wrestler, I would like to see like more action. This guy seems to do that really well. And a few of the artists have like some animation background, and I've also seen like one of them did like some animation shorts that I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is the guy. And I've even hired, like, not hired, I bought like a couple of sketchbooks like from some of the artists also to do like a little extra research. And in their sketchbook, they actually had more sequential art, which I was like, okay, they can do comics, and let's see what they can do with like my comic. There's some that actually haven't like fully explored doing comics, which I think is interesting, because I've seen some of their pages and I'm like, oh, you do it really well, but they've been wanting to do it. But yeah, that's pretty much like how I chose everybody. Like I had my eye on them already.
That eye on them already thing, I'm really fascinated by. So was this a thing that you had been kind of simmering on and considering before that sort of hardball question?
Yes. Yeah. Just thinking about it for a while now, because I was like, I want to go here, but I can't do it alone. I've been trying for like for a while, and I want to take it like to that next level. How can I, you know, if I do decide to do this, who would I get to help me out? And you know, I just kept my eye out like for artists that did wrestling art that I was like, oh wow, this is really good, this is really unique. That kind of had like their own style that stood out. And
it seems that in today's day and age of a lot of artists seem to post socially. I mean, maybe that the hunting for talent thing is it? I mean, I'm guessing it's pretty helped by how much artists share as far as process and finished work nowadays.
Yes, and the interesting thing is that there's also like a big community of pro wrestling fan art.
Oh.
And I didn't realize that until I started posting stuff up, and then people would comment on it, on like some of the fan art that I would do, and then I would see their fan art, and then I would see one of their friends' fan art, and I was like, oh wow, there's like this whole community of people that like to do like wrestling fan art that I wasn't aware of at the time. And I just started following people's art that I really enjoyed, and then I just decided to ask them if they'd be interested in doing a comic. And I kind of already had a relationship with them because I would comment on their work, they'd comment on mine, and it became easier like to ask them like, hey, I want to do this comic. Here's the idea. Would you be interested? You know.
That was one of my questions, was because when you reached out to me, it's like, yeah, like you said, we've known each other for a long time, and we've drawn fan art of each other's comics. And we've had a lot of interactions over the years. And so when you reached out to me, I don't want to say it felt informal, but it was very to the point. And it was like, hey, I'm doing this. I love your work. You know this. Do you want in? Right. And another thing that you did was you were very clear and upfront about what the terms were. Like, here are the terms. Like, I think you actually, yeah, you spelled out like this is roughly the time frame. You know, let me know your page rate, and I'm gonna need some sample pages. It was really very much to the point. But I think that was, well, I'll let you weigh in. Was that because of the fact that you knew that I knew who you were? Like, there was already like sort of a trust built in there, right?
Right. I also wanted clarity. I was also trying to see it like from my point of view. Like, if somebody came up to me and was like, "Hey, you want to do this comic? I can't pay you right now, but you know, I'm going to start a Kickstarter soon. I'm sure it'll work out." I wanted to be clear with everything, and I wanted to make sure that you knew how long it was going to take, that I was serious about it, and to make sure that you had the time to do it. There's another artist that I'm working with that what he does, like he does animation like full time, so he actually needs like a little bit of a longer time. So talk to him about it, and we've worked something out. And luckily, his comic is probably like the last comic down the line that we're going to be doing. But I felt like making sure you guys knew everything you needed to know to make the right decision and to make sure that you were in it, you know?
Right. Like that you were thinking about it from, and this is where you're in a unique position as somebody who has done freelance work. You know what you like to hear from a potential client, right? And so you were, rather than try to sell me on how fabulous this project's going to be and how it's going to make us all rich, it was like, this is the thing I'm doing. You already know about this thing that I've been doing because we've been talking about it over the years. So that out of the way, I want to do a big project with it. Here's when it's going to be due. Like this is what made it so easy to say yes to you. Beyond the fact that I love the comic, it's just like, oh, he knows how to talk to his fellow people. Is like, this is what it's due. This is how much. Can you do it? Right?
I will pay for sample pages.
Yeah, you paid for sample pages, which is like, wow. You know, but yeah, just that clarity and the brevity, I think, was really refreshing and unique. It's something that I get from a lot of my more established clients, but I still get approached every once in a while by, you know, people who, you know, they're trying to sell me on the passion rather than sell me on, you know, the scoring professional skills. Does that make sense, Rob? Am I saying it?
Oh, it totally makes sense. And I mean, clearly John has thought this through quite a bit. And, you know, for the position I'm in this other pair of projects, it's that Two Pizza Team thing that I've been working on. It's a game and it's a comic. I decided I'm doing more research while I continue to develop the work. Right. So I know I can be more specific. Like, so John, you had your comic out for like 5 years, right? Mm-hmm. And this is a thing I'm working on that's not really out in the world much yet. And so I don't really know enough of the specifics, except now, I mean, I've actually, I'm pretty much done with an 8-page mini comic. And so I've a bit more familiarity now, a little bit more knowledge as far as what I'd be asking for, but anyway, so I'm learning a lot. I've been taking a lot of notes, but I still think I'm, you know, a good number of months off from, like, or even a year or more off from the stage that you've been describing.
You want to be sure. I think that's the thing. Like, I was struggling with that like for a really long time. Like, and that's understandable too. I mean, it's your project. You're the one passionate about it, and you want it to, you know, follow your, what's the word? I'm saying it wrong.
Vision.
There we go. That's good.
Yeah, I know that it will be better with bringing in collaborators, both the game aspect of it and the comic aspect of it. I know that. It's just that I don't know enough of what that is yet. So yeah, I'm definitely not going to rush it. And anyway, but I like, you know, I mean, hearing your process, it sounds like a pretty reasonable one, and pretty darn like others could act on this. That whole the establishing relationships and gaining awareness just through the, the social contacts, and like putting that work out in the world too, showing like your interests and signal and stuff. I mean, it sounds like the biggest thing would be if someone's super passionate, it'd be hard to like squish this timeline, right? Like this is an organic thing you've been doing for years.
Right. Right. I also think, taking into consideration that they're also doing like other stuff too, like, Jersey isn't going to be working on NPW full time, and a lot of the other artists have other jobs too, and just taking that into consideration, where like when you approach them, also just be like, not necessarily say it, but have an understanding of like, okay, I know this is something that I would like you to do, but I also know that you have your own life, your own job. You're doing something else also.
Right. Like I was really impressed with how well you thought about the timeline. Like, okay, what is, it's between 16 to 18 pages. It's over this period of time. And when I looked at the calendar, I was like, okay, I could fit that in with all my other hustle. Right. It was clearly thought through by somebody who has done multiple threaded gigs at the same time. But that kind of recognition that like, you're not going to say, oh, hey, can you turn this around in 3 weeks? Make this your top priority? Thanks. I knew that you could, which can happen. I've had that happen with certain gigs, and I'm like, yeah, that's great. It's going to cost you double, but if the budget's there for that, but, knowing that, part of that pricing is figured into what their bandwidth is like. And, but like I said, like just like you had one thing I was very impressed with was how you had a very clear sense of what is a manageable amount of work to do in X amount of time, and then you pitched it and said, "Is this possible? Let me know." Right? Even asking me for my feedback on that is like, "Hey, let me know. Do you need more time or less time? When could this be delivered?"
Right.
And establishing those milestones, like when these different parts are going to happen. Okay, you're going to get scripts at this time, then pencils will happen, then inks, and then share your process throughout to help promote the Kickstarter. But another thing I was really impressed with, maybe this can be our final thought on this section before we move into the next one, is that you made it not only a two-way street in terms of input on establishing the terms, but you made it a two-way street in terms of, okay, here's the script for the sample pages. Then you immediately followed up with me afterwards and said, like, hey, what'd you think of that script? Did it give you everything you needed? And I want to say, before I go any further, you did provide it. I wish every writer did what you did, in that you mentioned all these different wrestling moves, and instead of just assuming that I knew what they were or that I could just Google them, you gave us a folder with GIFs of all of the different moves, right? So like we had like this repository of like, here's your resources. Like when they do this kind of clothesline or this kind of body slam, you can like find it right here so you can watch it over and over again and figure out how you're going to make the characters move that way. And then you also gave us like model sheets of all the characters and the setting. You prepared us with a lot of visual information. You set us up to succeed with the sample pages. But then after that, you made sure to come back and say like, okay, is there anything I could have done better to make it more, like make it better for you as an artist working on this? Which I just thought was like, chef's kiss, right? Would that every client did that too? So I was wondering, was that an intentional thing, or is that just like who you are as a person, where you want to level up on every aspect?
I think it's another thing from an artist's perspective, like getting gigs, wanting more information, or somebody just tells you, okay, go do this and make it happen. And you're just like, okay, I'll see what I can do. But
right.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that, because I think, especially in wrestling, some of the things that I'm trying to accomplish, storytelling wise, like in the ring, can be like a little confusing. And I just wanted to make sure everything was clear so I could get the point across story wise. And so you guys could understand what I meant, so you could create the story well. And just wanted to give you all of the possibilities of making that a success.
Yeah, that was great. Just what I'm hearing in there is that you didn't assume we were instantly going to understand what you wrote.
Right.
And although, I mean, it was written very clearly. I mean, there was no ambiguity, but I just like that you came in afterwards and said, like, okay, now that I saw what you did and I like what you did, what else can I do that makes it even better next time? That's just a really nice touch. And it's a great way where you're thinking, it sounds to me like you're thinking holistically, not just about the project's success, but everybody's success within the project.
Well, especially since I'm so used to working for myself, I probably haven't written out like a full script like ever since I've been working the comics. Like I have it all in my head and I just write down or sketch out like thumbnails and I'm like, okay, yeah, there we go. Good to go.
Yeah.
Now sharing it with other artists, I want to make sure that they have everything that they need to create like their page.
I remember one of my first book published gigs years ago. This was like back in like 2005. It was for Glencoe McGraw-Hill, and I gave them the thumbnails for the gig. Like here's the story, and they're like, okay, where's the script? I'm like, what do you mean? That is the script. Is the thumbnails? I just did it. They're like, no. We need a Word document with the actual script in it. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? I'd never done that before. But that's awesome. Are we ready to go into the next section? Rob, what are you thinking?
I think so. Let's explore when do you know that you need to hire, and let's digging deeper into those reasons and stuff. And and definitely let's work in more about this Kickstarter project you're working on too.
Sure.
All right. I just realized I didn't pull up the website for. Well, I'll do it on my desktop because I thought I had it on my second computer, but I guess I don't. So in a minute and 30 seconds or so, we're going to talk about some of like the why questions, like, well, like, why do you hire out, and what are some of the what am I trying to say? Some of the abstract 10,000 foot up questions about hiring out and getting people to collaborate with. But before we do that, we have to thank some people who make this show possible. Those people happen to be the folks who support us on Patreon. Yes, patreon.com/leanintoart is where you will find this crowdfunding thing. What is it? It's a way for you to give us a monthly upvote. It's a way for you to say, like, I believe in you guys. I believe in the stuff that you do. And you can vote for it for as little as $1 a month. We want to thank 5 people who've been doing exactly that. First up, Olivia Burton. Thank you, Olivia, for believing in the show. You can find Olivia on Twitter at Olivia Burton. Second up, we've got the Mysterious K. We don't know who you are. We don't know what your name is. We don't know what your social media handle is, but we appreciate the fact that you believe in our work to continue supporting it. Thank you, K. Also, David Say. David Say, Rob, supports the show.
That's awesome.
Unbelievable. One of our favorite people in the whole world. You can find him on Twitter at Dave Say, recently on the show. Also, Jodels Pox. Jodels Pox, I couldn't find a Twitter account for you, but I did find you on Facebook at Wolf of Soul Fetch on Facebook. Thank you, Jodels, for supporting the show. And finally, Angela Mitchell. Thank you, Angela, for believing in us and what we do. You can find Angela on Twitter at Angie Makes Stuff. And if you want to join them, you can go to patreon.com/leanintoart, where you will find all the shows that we produce, as well as the extra leans, the shows we record in between shows. Rather, it's more like a monthly thing that we do just for the people who support us on Patreon. And it's just Rob and me riffing, and then that post becomes an open mic post where you can continue the conversation in any direction you wish. And we want to thank everybody who has been supporting us at patreon.com/leanintoart.
Thank you very much. Your support means a lot to us.
All right, ready for the bridge to the next section? Here we go. I love this song so much. I was torn between this and the Roddy Piper theme, which is just bagpipes, right?
Good choice. Good choice.
I love Roddy Piper too. All right. So, second half of the show. When do you know that you need to hire? We kind of talked about it a little bit. You mentioned, it's like, well, I had been measuring how much my output was and realized that if I get more people, I can increase my output.
But there's got to be other aspects too to that.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm not going to draw the comic the way you draw it, John. And you know, like that's part of the appeal of this darn project is like looking at all the different styles that have been involved in the making of this so far.
I had like I mentioned like a little bit earlier, I had been struggling like for a long time of whether to hire out like other artists. Like there's that whole like I guess control over like your own work. And kind of like the fear that somebody else won't do it as well as you will do it. And
right.
And or one of the big things I remember struggling with was also like, does that make me a fraud? Can I still consider myself an artist if I get other artists to do what I'm doing? You know?
Oh, so you, in other words, are you an idea man? Hi,
right.
I'm John David Guerra. I'm an idea man. I get other people to do the actual grunt work. I sit back with my cigar, just puff on it thoughtfully, and just tell people what to do. Right?
Isn't that the dream though?
So it's not mutually exclusive, you know.
What is it? The Tim Burton thing. You just design the main characters, hire somebody to design the rest, and then just plaster your name on it, and it sells at Hot Topic. And
Matt Groening. Right, his name appears next to every drawing of The Simpsons.
No, but I felt like even now, like there's a part of me that kind of struggles with like wanting to let people know that I designed the characters, like but like there'll be like that small internal struggle where I'm like, oh, should I when I make it like a post about like an artist that put up the work, should I let people know that I'm also the artist? Because I've had people ask me like oh, like that I followed the comic before, like, oh, so what are you doing now? Like you're having these people just like do the comic like on their own or whatever. But it's becoming, I mean, just looking at the work, like I just quickly get reminded of like why I do it. I mean, I find it like really cool, like to also just see like other people's interpretations of like what I would do, like, and they're like the way they would handle pages, I find like super interesting and like rewarding in itself, where I'm just like, wow, I would have never have thought of things like in that way. Like an example actually is like Jersey's page, where I remember talking to my wife about it, about like the last panel where it has Lobo and Grave doing the drop kick to the Pumpkin Boys. Because in my head, I imagined it like differently, and it would have been like when I saw yours, I'm like, no, that's the way you would have done it. You know what I mean? Like, and
yeah. There's something about like when you let somebody else tell it their way, it's what you asked for and then some, because they're giving you their own perspective on it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know where I was going with that thought.
Well, no, but there's yes, I think that when I work with collaborators, that's part of the joy of it, is like I know how to ink and I kind of know how to write and I know how to letter. So it's like I don't need to quote unquote work with anybody, but when I do, it's like part of it is the joy of listening to our voices harmonize, right? It's like I'm a big ELO fan, and like on like one of their most recent albums, it's actually quite old now, Zoom, it's like almost entirely just Jeff Lynne doing everything. He's playing all the instruments, he's harmonizing with himself and everything. It's like he's proving that like he doesn't need to work with anybody else. But man, when I listen to the Traveling Wilburys, it's fun to listen to him and Tom Petty and Bob Dylan and Roy Orbison and George Harrison all counterpoint each other and work together that way. It makes a totally different kind of music, right? And I feel like it's the same thing when you work with different collaborators, when I'm working with an inker or when I'm working with a writer who doesn't necessarily think in the cadence that I think in, you know? And so, like, as I was navigating your script, I'm like, okay, well, they give the Pumpkin Boys the drop kick. How can I do this so as it's not an objective shot, like how we would see it on a television wrestling match, where there'd be the camera sort of pointed down a 3/4 down shot, not even 3/4 down shot, more like a straight on horizontal shot, slightly tilted downwards, looking at the ring, and we would see that, right? How could I do this in a very comic booky way? So I'm like, okay, well, we can get like right up close to those guys, get right behind the Pumpkin Boys as they're getting kicked, so we're watching them fall into us, right?
Right.
That kind of thing is, I think, part of the fun of collaboration, is like being pleasantly surprised, but there's a letting go that has to happen there, right?
Right. Well, I think that's where the trust aspect comes by, like when you're choosing the artist, like you're like, okay, I trust them. I like what they're doing. Let them work their magic, and let's see what happens. So another person that I was like, oh wow, I don't know how he's gonna do this. There's like a very technical wrestling sequence that I had Nate Villanueva do, where I don't even know how to explain it. Like writing it down, I remember giving him an example of, I wrote down the way I thought I could explain it, but then at the end I'm like, okay, if that doesn't make sense, there's a GIF. It's there. it's that sequence. You can use that for reference.
Which comic is Nate doing?
Happen at the end.
Which match is Nate drawing? I'm trying to pull it up from your Instagram.
Is it on my Instagram? It might be on the Kickstarter pages.
Okay.
Let's see.
Nate is doing Handsome Horace.
Yes, and Maldito.
Oh my gosh, yeah. There's some of Nate's work. Nate is really, really good. All the artists are great in this. I can't wait to read it.
Well,
even though I'm a part of it.
Where Handsome Horace grabs Maldito by the hands, and then he reverses it back and like ties up Handsome Horace with the hands, and then Handsome Horace reverses it and ties him back with the hands, and then Maldito like reverses it again and slides underneath his legs, and then ends up in the corner like you just saw, like waving back at him all confidently. And yeah, I was interested to see how he would do that, and he did like a really good job.
So I mean, I'm hearing it's one of the things that they tell you in various hiring situations. You're growing a team and you're getting the benefit of the diversity of thought, and the end product it being like you mentioned, trust as well. Like, so you're like growing this from a foundation of trust, and making informed hiring choices with good match for the talent and your purpose and stuff. And it just seems like these foundational building blocks that lead to saying now we have this shared purpose to, and it's clearly expressed. And, setting up an artist to be in the position to like put their full heart and voice into something, but without the ambiguity is, I don't know, it just seems like it's a really empowering thing. And
I like what you said, that shared purpose. I think that's also like a really cool aspect of it, where there's like this, like you said, like shared purpose with all these other artists, where you're like in the trenches together working on this single thing, but they're doing it their way, and you trust them to do it their way, and you want them to do it their way. And there's like that excited aspect to it, where you're like, okay, this is how I would do it. I'm kind of, let's see how they would do it, and trust them to see them, like, yeah, I don't know how else to say that. But.
So this is, and what's funny is like, we've been talking about like the big stuff, right? Like this is like sort of collaboration as, there's a lot of effort going on, and because you've really emphasized that you want to see how they would do this, you know, how would they pull this off? It's like, here's an objective, here's a destination. How would you get there? Right. But then what about this? Are there any aspects that you consider as for like small, like tasks that are more discrete than not as big, like the things like specific comic process things like lettering or
yeah,
handling, colors, flats, you know.
I'm going to be doing all that on my own, like all the lettering and everything like that. Like writing the script, I have an idea of the dialogue. And again, I think it's also like back to the whole thing about it being like a bit of a special case since it's like wrestling. I also felt like I could get more of a wrestling commentator kind of feel to it if I would see the artwork. So a lot of the dialogue is going to be the commentators talking. So I just have like a rough idea of what the commentators are going to say. And then if like one of the artists has like something cool that they drew, or the referee being affected somehow that I didn't think of, the commentators would comment on it. The coloring, I did want to kind of create like a bit of like a cohesion where it would be recognizable, like from a visual level that it all takes place like in the same world. So I kind of thought that I didn't, as different as I wanted the artists to be, I also wanted to make sure that there was like visual cues that would show the reader that, oh, this is all in the same world, and kind of have that same kind of like feel to it. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. That's an interesting way to have some cohesion among the different visions, where handling the lettering aspect, with being a separate job. That's really interesting. Seems like a really a pragmatic way to get that without being intrusive, right? The artists still get to do their thing. That's really cool.
I was also worried about including dialogue, and if that would get in the way of like the summary description that I would give them like for the page, because I know, well, I've seen and heard that most comic book writers like to break everything down by panel. And again, coming from an artist point of view, I was like, oh, I would like it more if the writer would just give me the idea of what they wanted, and then I could, as a comic book artist, create it myself. And then I think that's also the more exciting aspect of that, where I give them this idea and then I let them have it, and I let them create, and they get to create like, you know, their own way of doing it, rather than you know, kind of like micromanaging every aspect of it, you know, like, oh, he has to be looking left and only left, and then in this panel he's, you know, which there's some people that like that, but I like the idea of just like letting them create.
Well, and as somebody who's done this, you know that's where you have fun, right? You're again thinking about you're putting yourself in the place of the person who you're going to be working with,
right?
But something that Dan Mishkin does that I really, really appreciate whenever I work with him is he does give me full script with dialogue, but at the top of each page, he does a bullet point description of each panel. Like, here's the essential action in each panel, right? With like a little bit of an emotional cue. It's like, he angrily does this. He passively does that, right? That kind of thing. And then after I read that and sort of get a visual, like sort of pacing of the page, then I can go through and read the panel descriptions and the dialogue within. But it's a nice little quick way of like, look, I don't want to burden you with a whole bunch of my fancy, you know, dialoguing. Here's what happens first, right?
Well, there's also that trust also, like, that I have with all of you artists, that if you feel that you can make the page better than the way I'm describing it, or you can do the same thing with less panels, then go for it. You know, like when you get the full script, when I finish everything and send it out, I do have a description of the story of the match, like from a wrestling perspective. Like there's like a story that happens within the match. Maybe I can give you an example. Like, let's say a wrestler is working on somebody's right arm throughout the match, and he can't do specific moves because it involves that arm. And at the end, it's something that ends up costing him the match or something. So I'll write that out and be like, okay, this is the main idea of the match. This is how we're going to get to that point. And then I'll just write out like the page descriptions. But yeah, but that's getting more into like the wrestling storytelling aspect of it.
Which I do think that's that is a portable approach, because it really does sound like you're describing this this balance of having enough definition and having the clarity, and then the reference material to back that up and match it in there. But yet there's a lot of openness in what you're describing too. Not in a, again, without the ambiguity. It sounds like it's at the key beats and summary and moments and such that it sounds like a fun approach that I had never hadn't encountered. Now,
I was just going to say that one of the things that I did want to make sure to focus and establish, like with the comic, is the storytelling aspect of wrestling inside the ring, which I feel like a lot of like the WWE wrestling comics kind of stray off with the behind the scenes kind of stuff, and you're just kind of like, oh, I want to, that's not wrestling, I want to have the wrestling. So the idea of actually creating the comics as a wrestling show, I think was like a very important.
Yeah, when I think about like the matches that are memorable to me from my youth, it was the ones where like the crazy stuff happened in the ring. Not just like, oh, we hit him with a chair, but also like the showboating, like when George the Animal Steel would chase Elizabeth around. You know, it's like like the little dramas that happened around the ring were always fun. And I did notice that like in the '90s, it seemed to switch to like doing a lot of behind the scenes, backstage stuff, right?
Yeah. Especially right now, I don't watch WWE as much because I watch like the bigger shows, but a lot of their shows like on television. Well, for one, I don't have cable. I'm a cord cutter, so I just watch like Netflix and whatever I can that way. I do have the WWE Network, but they don't show like their weekly shows on there. But their storytelling is very, very frustrating. And it's not focused on, a lot of times it's not focused like in the ring sort of stuff. So, yeah, I wanted to make sure to establish like what I loved about wrestling, what's fun about wrestling, what, that sort of thing.
Looks like we're coming up on time for final thought. I have an idea for final thought. Can I pitch it at you guys?
Sure.
Yeah.
I was wondering how much the Collaborators' social presence figured into your decision-making process, in that it would occur to me, at least, when hiring people, that their ability to be a fellow cheerleader, like, are they the kind of person who can get behind something like this, and are they the kind of person who would be willing to shout about it on their networks? Contributes to the success of the thing. So I'd be thinking about that. I'm going to put that idea down, and we can think about it for a second while I do the final ad spot. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, in 1 minute and 30 seconds, we're going to talk about that too, because I think this is going to be important information for not only people who would potentially hire, but also for those of us who are looking for gigs, to think about as well. But we'll hash it out for our final thought in about, like I said, 1 minute and 30 seconds. But before we do that, we got to thank some more people who make the show possible. Those people happen to be us. Rob and I make stuff, and we think hard about the stuff that we make. And then we do this show where we think about it out loud. And but like, in case any of you are wondering, well, you say you're a cartoonist and teaching artist, Jersey. What comics do you make? Well, this June, I have a new book coming out from First Second Books. Worked on it with my wife. It's called Science Comics Rockets. And what is it? It's a 114-page graphic novel. That's not a graphic novel. It's nonfiction. It's a 114-page comics documentary about the science and history of rockets. How do rockets work? Why do they work? And who are the people who helped make rockets get better and better to where we can actually go to other planets with them? And it's told by animals who participated in rocket history. So yes, tortoises who rode on rockets, bears who rode on rockets, chimps, dogs, even quails who rode on rockets, and spiders are in the book too. And you can get it. It's up for pre-order on Amazon, and it's in this month's Previews magazine. So if you get your comics at comic stores, you can get it in hardcover or paperback. And like I said, it comes out in June. And if you're in the Midwest area, Ann and I are going to be doing a series of workshops to promote the book as well. Stay tuned for that. But Rob, you make a game. You want to talk about this game you make?
Yeah, sounds great. The game that we're going to check out is called This Panda Needs You. And, I didn't know if you realized this, but yeah, there's a panda out there that does need you. And the situation is, happens to be this panda inhabits this little, this bamboo forest with some mountains in the background and block puzzles, right? So there's these physics-based and shape and color pattern matching based puzzles that this little panda keeps encountering, and they're fine. They're all set up and whatnot until a cloud comes along and knocks it all down. And nothing personal. It's just what the cloud does. And now it's the panda needs you to put everything back to the way it was. And it's a great game for all ages. It's a great relaxing game. It does build up in difficulty very slowly over more than 50 levels. And the panda celebrates as you get things and make progress. And that's one way to know, are you back on the right track? And anyway, you can find out more about it at this-panda.com, and it happens to be available for iPhone, iPad, Android phones and tablets, and also Mac and Windows desktop. Go to your respective platforms' app stores, right? Except in the case of desktop, you'll want to go to itch.io and search for This Panda Needs You.
And if you did purchase it there, or wherever you purchased it, giving it a review, a star review, 5-star review, tell other people about it, helps more people find the game as well. But let's say you're like, oh, that's fine, Jersey and Rob, that you guys make stuff, but we're really here because of the way you think about stuff. Sure, no problem. leanintoart.com/workshops is where you can find self-contained videos of workshops that we've led in person at schools, universities, and comic conventions. I've got comic book workshops there. Rob's got Storyteller's UI tools, making video games from comics. You can download them at a price if you're choosing, even free. You can download them for free. But if you do get some value out of them, I would ask that you come back and purchase it afterward. That's like giving us a tip. And then you could give it to a friend. If you're watching the video now on YouTube, giving it a thumbs up helps more people find the show. And if you're listening to it in a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, giving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to the show helps more people find it as well. And we thank everybody who has been doing all those things. It means a lot to us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. We got just a couple minutes to go.
Mm-hmm. So
how do we think about this? This like the presence. Go for it. Frame it up, Rob.
Well, you mentioned a great question to explore as a final thought, which is, so how much was it an influence seeing the social presences of these potential collaborators, and was it how much of an influence was that, and was part of that influence thinking about how it would be helpful for the Kickstarter aspect of the project?
Maybe it was a little naive of me, but I didn't even look at that.
That's fantastic. We have this leading question. We're like, here's our big assumption we're putting on the table, and you're like, nah.
I had
That's
no
awesome.
idea. I had no idea how many followers they all had or anything. I was just like, oh, I like what they do. Let's do it.
Oh, that's awesome.
But
It's so
it was only like until like afterwards, until after I had asked everybody, that I did realize some of them had like a big social presence and a big following, and then that played into my me and my friend who helps me, like our approach to Kickstarter, because we were like, I think it would be a better idea to wait till April to do the Kickstarter, because then you guys would start on some work and you guys could show your work. So that's where it played a part. But besides that, I just I didn't even think to look at that.
Well, I think about this a lot, in that, as somebody who, you know, has had a couple projects published, more and more your presence online counts as part of this is what I've been told, is that it counts as part of the calculation as to whether or not you sell a project. Not that it's the final calculation, but it's in the math there someplace. And this is where something that's changed a lot in publishing in the last 10 years, at least that I've noticed, is when we were working on Rockets, like, we were encouraged to share like little snippets of progress while we were working on it. The selling your sawdust, as it were, that we've talked about in other podcasts, like these little artifacts of things that you make in the making of the final thing are themselves interesting pieces to trickle out for people to follow and build interest and excitement around a thing. So I know when we started working on this project together, I noticed that you did say, like, yeah, when you guys start working on the pages in April, share some of the work in progress and remind people about the Kickstarter, which is like, yeah, we all have we have a lot of skin in that game. So yeah, we're happy to do it, right? So yeah, I think that was actually a pretty good calculation on your part. And it's something I think, Rob, as you're thinking about, you know, working with other people for Two Pizza Team, what can that look like? What can the sawdust of Two Pizza Team, the game, look like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for games, there's plenty of established tradition in the game development community. So people do like screenshot Saturdays. A lot of folks will hang out in different sort of little community Slack channels or Discord channels, right? And and sort of share work in small crowds, that kind of thing. But yeah, that's a great question. Because it would depend on the asset, right? I mean, music, pretty shareable, animations, sharing little GIFs and stuff, totally. We'll see. I've seen some developers who will actually stream while they're coding, right? And just be like typing. And that one hasn't, I might do that, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm at least, I'm going to say, a year behind. So I don't know.
Well, I think we did a podcast, guys.
I think so. This has been really awesome having you on, John. And so let's pitching your work and where people can find you and
let me pull up
reminder about the Kickstarter. Let's do that.
I'm going to pull up the Kickstarter on screen now. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, you can find, nightmareprowrestling.com is where I usually put up my work, and you can find, right now we're trying to fix the website, so maybe some links don't work. But you can see some of my old Nightmare Pro Wrestling comic up there. Along with like some of the bios of some of the wrestlers. And I'm on Instagram under John David Guerra, Jon David Guerra, and Twitter, and what else? Facebook under Nightmare Pro Wrestling. Facebook, yeah.
I do want to do a call out to the leaners who are listening in. Do go check out the Kickstarter, and I really want to say, please consider supporting it, because I think it is, as somebody who's read this comic for years, it is a joyous comic. I think a lot of people listening to this know that like Boulder and Fleet has been a lot of my exploration into, can you do exciting action in a way that doesn't glamorize violence? I feel like Nightmare Pro Wrestling does something very similar in that, because it's the conceit, it's wrestling, so it's like drama fighting, right? But also it does it with this, like, do you like spooky stuff? Do you like the glory and power of the human form, as it were, joyously smashing into itself, right? But in a way that never like really promotes inflicting suffering on people.
That's interesting that you say that. Like, thinking about it now, I think that was also like an aspect of back to that question of like hiring like artists, making sure that they wouldn't turn NPW into some sort of like violent, bloody, you know, crazy kind of comic.
Yeah, make it all like 90s, you know.
Right. People's arms get cut off and that sort of thing.
Right. Like, yeah, the characters, like, even like when you think about like, okay, I'll pull up the image of like the match that I'm drawing with Graven Logo versus the Pumpkin Boys, and like you look at the Pumpkin Boys and they're kind of scary, but like in a Halloween kind of scary way, and they're clearly the heels, but they're not evil, right? There's difference between being evil and being a heel. Like, being a heel is like being a jerk. Like, that's why I could like characters like Ravishing Rick Rude, even though like he doesn't represent any ideals at all. Yeah. he's a complete.
You're trying to get people to boo you. That's pretty much.
Yeah. And so like I feel like that joy just permeates the entire comic, and it just feels like I wish this was a cartoon when I was a little kid. I would have eaten this up as a child. So, and that's another thing. It's something that I think is like safe for families to read together too. And if you support the Kickstarter, you get all six issues, and then it's going to be collected as a trade paperback afterwards, right?
Yes, it is, with some special features like in the back and stuff like some fan art, and I'll be doing like a little like a couple of comics in the back also.
Oh my gosh, so much fun! So, Nightmare Pro Wrestling, Belly of the Beast. Please do go check it out, Leaners. I don't think you'll be sorry. The Kickstarter's it's got 21 days to go at the time of this recording, so move on it. All right. Well, thanks again, John. Thanks, Rob. And
thank you, Jersey.
Thank you.
We record this show every week at Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central. It is streamed live on YouTube and then collected as a podcast at patreon.com/leanitoart. Thanks, everybody, for downloading, watching, and listening. Until next time, I have been Jersey Drozd of leanitoart.com and Jersey Drozd on Instagram.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanitoart.com, and I'm Rob Stenzinger on Instagram.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
Okay, I'm going to shut off the stream. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out.
Yep, thanks for hanging out.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob.